That was the leather.
I know.
No, I swear to God. I will get defensive about that one.
Okay.
That was the leather.
So we're back.
Yeah, hey, what's up?
Took a long break.
You're listening to the Power 92.3 WKVR. I'm Jdox. I'm here with Static. You're listening to the Slouch. Sorry, I'm going full
tilt.
Rick Sanchez mode about just like burping in the middle of my sentences, like Morty, you gotta just stop being a wuss. Come on, put these space drugs. Morty, put these space drugs. Morty,
you need to take the seed. You need to take
Damn
the
it,
seed.
just
and
real far
shove
up your ass.
Shove it way up your butthole, Morty. Just get it way up there.
Oh boy, wait. I gotta change this thing around. Whoa. Okay, the voice is up. You hearing that?
Yeah, a little
What's
bit.
up? This is the Slouch. So what we have been listening to is some great psychedelic dream pop type stuff. We've been listening to Malka's album, The Constant State, and right now we have transitioned to the Verjances, and their album, Paradigm 3. You can look up both the Malka and the Verjans, not the Malka, just Malka on SoundCloud, and you can look up the Verjans on SoundCloud. They've got really great stuff. I think a lot of their music's up there for free, but if you got the opportunity, throw them a couple bucks. Keep their art alive. This is what we like listening to. Well, not Static. This is what I like listening to, at least. And this is what we like to put on in the background while we do this garbage. So, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
You have something, I think.
Oh, what do I have? You hear that? It's papers rustling. You know whose papers these are? These are Kevin's papers. Hey, what's up, dude? Been looking all through these, been reading these. But thank you very much for writing in, as always. We love that you're listening. We love that you're keeping track with us. Playing requests, as you said, on the Slouch, I think not so much. This is our discourse. This is our conversation. But I believe you've been writing. Have you been writing into what's in our mailbox? I'm not sure. Anyway,
I think that one is to the mailbox.
You definitely.
According to DJT.
Okay, you definitely put in a whole bunch of music requests in here, and that is fantastic. And I will be getting all of these in order, as well as a whole bunch of other music requests in order, because on Thursdays at 9 o'clock, I come in here and I do the What's in Our Mailbox show, in which I play a whole bunch of different requests for music that do tend to be along some heavy and some metal lines, such as A Day to Remember, All That Remains, Slipknot, oh my gosh, Secondhand Serenade, okay, Abandoned Old Ships. I'm gonna look these up. Oh hey, Bowling for Soup's on here, that's cool. Oh, Hawthorne Heights, My Chemical Romance.
MCM.
Okay. We're gonna have a
wait, no, MCR.
But you got a lot of songs on here, and that's great. And
yes.
We are going to be busting that wide open on Thursdays at 9 o'clock. I have an hour on the Thursday slot, and then the Snack Shack comes on. But then after the Snack Shack, I'm going to be back, and I'm going to be busting out more of that. We are going to figure out the schedules for this, see if I can eat me up some more time. But 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock onward on Thursdays, we are going to be bumping all kinds of your stuff. I got all kinds of music from UK. I got all kinds of other stuff from SCI, and I apologize for some reason assuming that you weren't at SCI. The envelopes were different, where some of our letters come and say SCI on them, and yours didn't, so that led me to assume that you were not at SCI. But thank you for clarifying that. Now I know better. Right. I love your mischievous grin face that you drew on here. I know you don't think it worked out well, but I definitely picked up the crooked smile going on in there. And thank you for listening once again. So you sent us a bit about, heavily underlined, very emphasized, why prison sucks. And I feel like you don't need a very extensive argument to describe why prison sucks. I mean, it's very, very sucky. We were curious about, though, your experience, whether you've had it or not, or whether you've had a secondhand experience through someone else about the idea of solitary confinement, in regards to your mom doing a sort of solitary confinement simulation at the chapel. And so my only point of reference on this sort of thing is that it is a very, how I don't know. It's a very dark, very severe form of psychological torture in a lot of ways. So, I mean, as I've said, I've only really taken in the prison experience from media and pop culture, so I don't know if that's a really accurate representation, but if you have any experiences or secondhand experiences from someone you've known about what solitary confinement is, I'd be really curious to learn about what that's like, honestly. And it seems like a really interesting thing. It's definitely on my list of things I do not approve of in the prison industrial complex, because it seems like it's really inherently a punishment centered around psychological torture.
Yeah.
What's up, Static?
I mean, I agree.
You hanging out?
I agree.
There was a I was looking into this. There's actually not solitary confinement, but like isolation chambers, right? Like sensory deprivation.
Ooh.
Right? No, which I mean,
doesn't that make people go crazy?
It does, which is how sensory deprivation, especially in the form of solitary confinement, is a form of psychological torture to some people. But
ew.
So I got a lot of phlegm right there. It is a form of therapy in certain contexts. And I was researching this for a while. In Pittsburgh, which is my hometown, there are certain spas and certain areas, I guess, where they do sensory deprivation chambers, which is a really cool thing if you want to research that. That is a like a little egg that they put you in, like a big egg that you sit in, and it's filled with a thick jelly that is the exact body temperature of your body.
That sounds nightmarish.
So when you sit in it, when you really soak into this warm jelly,
Please stop.
it doesn't feel like anything. It feels like you're just floating, like your skin has melted and dissolved, and that your body has
like the
totally
LCL from Evangelion.
Probably.
Shinji, get in the robot.
That's a deep cut.
Shinji,
All right, let's get
robot.
it. That's a deep cut to Evangelion. Neon Genesis.
Oh, that will always have a special place in
Evangelion,
my
where you
heart.
get put into some goo that fills up your lungs and it helps you. It's an oxygenated goo. That when it gets into your lungs, it doesn't. You don't drown because it oxygenates your lungs in the goo. So you're just totally permeated with this thick fluid. Anyway, so the idea behind this is you can put in a little egg full of this body temperature goo, and that effectively like makes your tactile senses on your skin like just nothing. I mean, you feel like you're floating weightless in the cloud. Your skin has dissolved, your body has dissolved. You don't feel anything through your skin anymore. You're effectively entirely numb.
Going to have nightmares.
Followed by this egg thing actually closes up. It's in complete darkness.
Ugh.
You have no visual sensory input. It's perfectly sound insulated, so you have no audio sensory input.
If you make a sound, can you not hear it?
Do we want to talk about sensory inputs now in the way that I'm turning off this disco ball?
Thank you.
Because that's giving me motion sickness.
Okay, it was making me disoriented as well.
Yeah.
Oh, they're listening in the other room.
So to be in this sensory deprivation chamber cuts off your sense of touch, sight, and sound, and presumably, unless you are eating something, you're not going to have much of a. Did I literally just hear you get a text message on the radio, Static?
Yes, you did. Okay.
Come on. So, to be totally cut off sensory-wise.
Mute. How do I do that?
So to totally cut off your sensory input stuff in that way, supposedly, induces a lot of hallucinations or all kinds of stuff. Weird. You get like in a meditative state. You get in really transcendent mind space without any sensory input.
I feel like I'd have a panic attack.
I'm sure some people have.
I would not deal well with that sort of environment. I don't know.
But
Can we talk
this
about
is
something that isn't as boring?
No.
Not to be a dick, but this really doesn't interest me at all.
That's pretty boring.
You're just getting like high friend Jdox over here, like, yeah, man.
Sorry, I'm very relaxed tonight.
Transcendence, man.
Hey.
No, it's okay. We've all been in that frame of mind before, probably.
Hey man, like it's just you get rid of your sensory inputs and it's like it's all good, man.
Oh man, dude. Okay, we need to stop. We gotta stop.
What?
Okay.
Anyway, I wish I had talking points. Oh,
You want to
dang!
talk
What
about
time is it
things.
right now? Oh,
It is-
It is almost midnight to November the 18th, and guess what's on November the 19th of our year 20 of the year of our Lord 2015?
I do not know, Jdox.
Do you know
Please
that
tell
that's
me.
Kevin's birthday?
Now I know.
Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.
Happy birthday, Kevin! I'm gonna put on some kind of song. I'm gonna put on something.
Tomorrow's the 18th.
Tomorrow's
It's not tomorrow yet.
No, like
That's the-
Wednesday is the 18th.
DJT coming in saying Wednesday's the 18th. I know that. And because we are 3 minutes away from midnight right now, it is almost the 18th and the 19th, the next day, which, wait, if Wednesday is the 18th, okay, so, no, I'm figuring it out. I'm figuring it out right now. I'm processing this in my mind. You wanna hit that mic, T?
Are we talking to Kevin?
Yeah, we're talking to Kevin.
All right, Kevin, I'm aware that Thursday is your birthday, and we can play you happy birthday stuff now, and we can also play it to you on Thursday during What's in My Mailbox. Sorry,
Thank you,
Jay.
Thank you, DJT, for somehow, like, really advertising my own shows better than I could possibly myself. So I'm gonna boot up a good old.
So much for doing your work.
Do you hate me?
No.
Are you okay?
I hate you.
I don't want you to hate me. Jay, I just heard you and I was like, wait, no! No!
Oh boy. So, hey,
Freaking triple.
Kevin, we love that you write in all the time. You write in so much stuff. You've got a whole bunch of really, I'm
We're
throwing
gonna
my own
need to
computer
take
around.
some time to digest it and then come back at it next week.
Really, we're gonna
really
process
sorry.
that. I'm gonna set a playlist together because you threw us so many songs, and that is fantastic. That is exactly what I absolutely, above all things, love to get here in the station. Whoa.
What is happening?
Being him.
So, anyway,
Stop.
we got a couple talking points from Kevin in the
What
middle
are they? What are they? Say them. I want
about,
to
and
talk
we're gonna.
about things.
And here's the prelude to our actual talking points. McDonald's serving breakfast all day.
No, I don't.
Okay, we got some there.
I'm not a McDonald's person.
The idea of social anxiety.
Oh yeah, I've been there, done that. Still
Um,
doing that.
The technology that humans apparently have to make humanzees a human chimpanzee hybrid.
That sounds bad.
That sounds terrifying. Let's see. We have a direct return writing to Kevin address, which we will be hitting up.
Cool.
Let's see.
Anything else?
This place is, I'm quoting this right from Kevin's letter. This place is sort of like Shawshank Redemption. This prison was built in 1879,
Oh boy.
or scattered. Sorry, I don't know that word. In 1879, I guess I'll write like a personal narrative about my experiences. Please do. Honestly, we love to learn. We love to know about it. As we've said before on the show, our perception of what prison is like is really based solely on the media representation of it. And because I personally, as Jdox, think that media representation is often very incorrect and really informs the culture in a negative way,
Why are you wording this so harshly as if you're attacking me?
because that's literally what I'm doing.
I believe bad representations are bad. I don't think that a media representation perpetuates a societal problem. I think it's a symptom of a societal problem. You need to fix the underlying problem, and the art will change to reflect the culture that's producing it.
And my argument is that you fix it by changing the media representation.
No.
And not only in that way, but in a large part in that way because the media informs the way you perceive the world as you grow up consuming the media. And as a dude myself
I
who
would
consumed
disagree.
a lot of media growing up, that's how I perceive the world. But so to not take...
I would disagree greatly. I mean,
Media.
Okay,
oh my
okay,
god.
thanks,
Are you
comm
gonna just
major.
like pop in and troll, or are you gonna just stay here?
Yeah,
I'm
because she's a
gonna
comm major, she knows that, but like, you got work to do, T.
I do. But are you guys only going till midnight, or are you like...
Oh, we're gonna
Oh.
go till we're done.
Okay, alright.
That's
Whenever
honestly
you get a
how it
chance,
is.
You should rep for me and DJ M, who will be changing her name.
Are you, you guys gonna
alright,
pop
okay.
back in here?
We're gonna have our own little show shindig at 7 o'clock on Fridays. So yeah,
Cool.
Hey, heads up for that,
Nameless
7 p.m.
It doesn't have a
Friday.
name yet.
It
This
does
is,
not, it does not have a name. My DJ co-host does not have a name.
We got DJ T and DJ M. That is a TM. Pokemon TM75
No, okay.
flamethrower.
Okay,
You're gonna be
wait, bye
throwing
for
some
real.
flame.
Happy
All
Ellen's
right.
birthday if I don't make it on Thursday. All that good stuff. Bye.
You're literally down with TM, as in the Pokemon like learn how to do Hyper Beam or Blizzard.
Or MT, short for mountain.
Oh yeah, it'll be the mount. Yeah, we were literally talking about because we made this show initially called the Slouch, and I decided that because it rhymed with my co-host Static's
No.
last name, and I'm not saying what your name is, but it rhymes with Slouch,
Thank you.
and because I wanted to phrase it as the Slouch with
No.
blank. That's not how it turned out though, and I'm not gonna disclose your name on it, but the whole point of it anyway. But we were literally changing to call it, instead of the Slouch, we're going to call it the discourse. Because that's what it seems to be. It's the discourse, right? Like, that's what it's turning into because we hit on
And
these
speaking of discourse,
big
let's not beat
issues.
a dead horse and argue about media again. Cause
We're going to beat this.
we just get mad. We both do.
We'll beat a living horse if we need to.
BoJack Horseman.
We talk about BoJack Horseman.
I love
BoJack
that
Horseman's
show.
a good,
I
it's a
can't
good
wait for
goddamn show.
This
So,
Friday, Jessica Jones comes to Netflix.
I'm hyped for that. We got to talk about that when we come back. But we're going to pop away for a second because we're going to play a good old thing.
Poppity pop.
We're going to talk about BoJack Horseman, McDonald's serving breakfast, social anxiety.
What?
We're going to talk about other things, SAI Huntington, Shawshank Redemption. Alderaan is apparently the home planet for humans in the Star Wars universe. So maybe Alderaan is Earth and Alderaan explodes in the distant past, or maybe humans aren't humans in the Star Wars universe. We're going to look that up. We're going to research that, and we're going to come back real quick. But before... okay, come on.
What are we going for? We just got back on the air.
We're heading to a right now request of Kevin's, and we're gonna come back on some stuff.
Well, one interesting thing with Star Trek, I don't remember the episode.
Nobody said Star Trek.
Oh.
Go.
Well, now I'm talking about Star Trek.
Now you are. Go.
There was an episode where they were doing like negotiations, and they're talking about human rights, and one of the alien races they're speaking with says human rights, the very way, like, I'm butchering it. It was like human rights, the very name by which you call the idea is racist. Just chew on that for a little bit.
Okay.
I love Star Trek.
Human rights to say, as opposed to.
Well, because imagine
as
if
opposed
we
to
meet
rights,
if we meet
sentient rights,
if we meet extraterrestrials,
living
or
rights,
if the singularity occurs and AIs are at the same level,
organic
as people,
rights,
same level as people, can we still call it human rights and get away with that? I don't know.
Chew on that for a bit. So, what we are currently listening to is Moonologue, a cool pun about the word monologue. It is Moonologue by the Vergents off of their album Paradigm 3. Let's listen to it real quick. Honestly, all of the Vergents' songs kind of sound the same, but it is really great music to listen to. It's like cool ambient stuff, and I love it. I listen to it all the time. But, oh God, where'd it go? Oh crap. Wait. Right. So, it's 5 after midnight right now.
Yep.
So a 1 day early. Happy birthday.
I mean, why don't? Okay.
To Kevin.
Oh, now I know what's
We're
happening.
gonna go to a 4 years strong. We all float down here. We'll be back.
What is the beeping? Is that the song?
Yeah, that was.
Oh.
Yeah, that was the song. Oh boy, so what we just listened to was Turn Back the Time by May Miss I. Before that, we heard Dead by My Chemical Romance and Helena by My Chemical Romance. That was sort of off tone, I suppose, for the Slouch. But we got some stuff in by my boy, Kevin. Wait.
Yes.
And we,
You're just throwing papers all over the place.
I know, because that's how I buy time for myself, is by making a lot of paper rustling noises.
Oh my God.
That was for Kevin. Tomorrow's his birthday. Happy birthday, buddy. Wanted to play some of that stuff. And hey, if you're around Thursday night, 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock or anywhere in between, we are going to be jamming even more of that. We've got your music then mixed in with some other bunch of people music. We got a lot of people writing into that, and we are going to be, it's going to be hard and heavy up in there. It's going to be real serious. We got to get some good metal. We got to get some good stuff in there. Man, listening to some good My Chemical Romance, though, is honestly like a serious throwback for me, man. I was like all about that stuff back in middle school, and I'm getting back into it now. My Chemical Romance is still some good stuff, though. So we are resuming our regular Slouch content with some Virgins. This is Moonologue, like a monologue, but with the moon.
Oh, man.
So DJ Static and I have been here talking about all kinds of different stuff. Specifically, some hot topics in the American college university life scene recently.
Yeah, that seems to be the theme tonight.
Definitely involving the idea of safe spaces and the right of association that we have to associate ourselves with
freedom of
association to associate with people who
as we choose.
And in a lot of cases that depends on their cultural, political, sociological perspectives and beliefs.
Yep.
And that's been a hot button issue in the college and university scene in America recently because of some very politically charged stuff going on.
Well, there's been a lot of politically charged stuff going on, and it's all kind of getting confused and lumped in a big...
Let me tell you right now,
thing.
I'm very confused.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to reorganize my stuff. So, my buddy the Slouch sent me a really good article about safe spaces at a college. A safe space as shield and a safe space as a sword. Written by one Ken White on the website Pope Hat.
Yeah, a friend sent it to me, and I thought it was
honestly a very interesting idea. It's about creating safe spaces, and maybe I haven't been understanding the idea of the safe space as a college entirely to the degree that it's used in the real world. I mean, I've always known safe space as a place of literal physical safety in a lot of ways, because in certain parts of the country, someone of a certain ethnicity or gender identity or sexuality is at physical risk from some people, that they are subject to a certain high amount of violence from the culture where that can really actually hurt them. So the idea of a safe space, a literal safe space, a space like a zone of physical existence, is very important for some people who are physically targeted and victimized in the culture. So, the idea about this, though, is that a safe space, in a certain sense, in certain colleges has become, let's see, as it describes here, a self-selected community, which
it runs on its own private rules.
Absolutely. Taken to the extreme, it can become a real exclusivity of social and political perspectives and opinions.
Right, which is a problem unto itself. But in this context, that's its own thing. Like, I think the context of a safe space as a shield is like a support group is a good example. Like, I mean, I don't know how much I agree with Alcoholics Anonymous, but that's the first that comes to mind, or like a victim support group or something. You know, places where you go and you feel the idea is to be supported and feel safe in telling your story or of your personal struggle or whatever. Yeah?
Yeah.
And I agree very much with this article in that it also says that when a safe space, the rhetoric of a safe space, I suppose, the idea of a safe space is used to sort of commandeer a more public space where there isn't a freedom of association and run it by those same private rules, it becomes a form of authoritarianism, and it's not, I would say that's not right.
I would too. Given that example, and I'm not sure how it exists in other communities, in other colleges, and
the most notable example that's been in the news a little bit lately, for probably some of the wrong reasons as well as some of the right ones because of how the media works, has been Yale with the
very prestigious, very well known Yale.
Yeah, but what happened was it was over Halloween costumes. It was basically the dean sent out a email letter thing that was along the lines of
school-wide emails from the dean ourselves.
That was along the line. Yeah, it was along the lines of like, don't please. No, it wasn't even a command. It was like, please don't wear offensive costumes or costumes that could offend people. And a professor sent out a rebuttal email that was along the lines of like, well, unless anyone's getting actually hurt by a Halloween costume, it's really silly to be. I'm losing it. It's really bad to be.
I know what you mean.
Like if a
Where-
Halloween costume offends you, there's really no reason to make a big deal out of it. Just leave that person go their merry way. That was the response to it, and
I know what you mean,
it
and-
blew up on that campus, and
Yeah.
it became a shouting match.
It became a national argument now.
Yeah.
As we've seen it in the media, it's become really big.
Well, what I don't like is it's been used as like on the internet, like, oh, LOL, look at those SJWs, and it's like, that's an oversimplification.
I mean, definitely, I don't agree with racial stereotypes used as Halloween costumes.
I mean, it's insensitive.
Yeah,
I would be offended, but
this can range
but-
anywhere from literally wearing blackface, which is, I think, on the farther side of messed up.
of straight up insensitive.
Straight up, really, that's racist. Don't do that. To a different level where, I mean, a different perceived level where it is to say have a Halloween costume where you are like a Native American or a caricature of a Mexican with, like a poncho and I literally can't think of the name for the hat. Help me out here, buddy.
The Pope hat?
No, the
That
Mexican hat.
Oh, the sombrero.
Sombrero.
Literally
Wow.
the word for hat in Spanish.
I literally could not remember it just now. Where those are racially and socially insensitive costumes. Those are not inherently as inflammatory as wearing blackface for Halloween or something, or some other like racist
Here's
caricature
the
of a
thing,
costume.
though. I think when people get mad at people dressing up as mariachis, that's a little silly, because mariachis are themselves wearing a costume. Like no one dresses like that. Having lived in South America, no one dresses like that unless they're performing. It's a performance.
I mean, if your Halloween costume is a mariachi band and you're dressed as a mariachi band, then that's a mariachi band.
Yeah, but
if you're dressed
you see what I'm
as
getting
a
at, though.
Mexican and you've got a big cartoon mustache and a sombrero and a poncho, that's racially insensitive. Or, I mean, I wouldn't consider. I mean, to be Mexican is not a race, but that's like
it's culturally insensitive
or nationally insensitive. Yeah.
I would agree, ish.
So, anyway, where this got taken then was that to whatever degree that these Halloween costumes were like being inflammatory or insensitive, the president was saying like, just. I mean, we know in the media.
Please don't.
We know in the media and the social media
things get
how
blown
these
out of
things
proportion.
get. There is a spotlight on this stuff where this stuff gets noticed, and it really. I mean, as it did, I imagine, happen when Yale Halloween parties did get outed as having a lot of racially insensitive themes to the parties themselves or to individuals' costumes, that reflects poorly on the school. And so the president says, please don't do anything culturally insensitive at our Halloween parties. And I don't think that's unreasonable if the email was just to say, please don't do this, because I would tell people, please don't do this. Because it's not great. It's pretty bad to do. But then, so this professor's rebuttal was saying it's a sort of freedom of expression, or
something along those lines. Like, unless somebody is actually being harmed by an offensive costume, like, people are free to do as they want. So rather than make a big deal out of it, just kind of, I don't know, leave them alone, I think was the argument.
That sort of touches on, like...
Another article I sent you had the actual rebuttal that was sent.
And I haven't gone through most of those articles.
I can't remember the rebuttal for the life of me.
But so the idea that something like that is harmful is itself a difficult topic, because, I mean,
we argue about it all the time.
DJ Static and I have argued about the effects of, the microaggressions and the cultural representations and stuff, and to what degree that affects, actual harmful behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm definitely of a mindset that to wear a culturally insensitive costume, such as, being a big air quotes Mexican with a sombrero and a big mustache and a poncho and maybe like a stuffed animal donkey or something.
Oh, God.
That is not itself immediately harmful, but what it does do is it promotes and perpetuates the cultural stereotype and like commodification of Mexican or Central American people in general as a culture that, that perpetuates the culture that leads to them being like, dehumanized. Marginalized is the good word. Dehumanized. Anything it promotes the caricature and the stereotype and everything that contributes to it being like heavily marginalized and just not taken seriously in the discourse.
I mean, I would
that
agree
community,
that
that amount of people,
that
I guess.
bad representations, or I guess in this context, of insensitive costume, it's offensive and it's a poor representation and it's indicative of ignorance. But I really don't think there's a perpetuative effect, because the people wearing that costume, they're either doing it ironically as a joke and they're just insensitive, or they actually believe something along those lines, in which case they're already a racist. Like, they're already there. They're not, like, the costume doesn't magically make them a racist. They're racist when they take it off. They're racist when they put it on.
Well, if the costume is an expression of the individual's racism, then I would say then that opens them up to criticism for being racist.
Yes, but I would say that doesn't perpetuate racism.
I would say that does.
No. I maybe would meet you halfway in saying it
perpetuates the idea
admitting it, or no, allowing people to get away with it without even criticism, maybe doesn't perpetuate racism, but I'm willing to meet you in the middle and say that letting people off the hook completely for, like, you know, going to a party in blackface maybe doesn't perpetuate racism, but it sure as hell lets people think they can get away with racism.
Okay. Did we hear a noise from the other room?
We heard a
just now?
woot from DJT.
I honestly didn't think there was anyone over in the other room. But so this was the big thing. Well, that I mean, a racist costume of a Latina person was not like what sparked it off. It was a lot of different things contributing to it that sparked it off. But there have been, following this, like a huge amount of discourse in the American college and university scene about like racial sensitivity and sensitivity to any other marginalized group of those communities, of those colleges, and how that prompts the concept of safe spaces. Yep. And then in the way that it's very tightly interconnected with other movements and stuff, which is why, like, at Juniata right now, we have banners about Black Lives Matter, Brown Lives Matter,
and
Queer
people
Lives
are
Matter,
getting
Asian Lives Matter.
Antsy about it.
Yeah, and that it's the existence of those banners and those ideas are inflammatory in and of themselves. Boy, you should see the
and you know
the
what?
local Yik Yak
under freedom
stream.
of speech, those have every right to be there, because clearly people disagree with it for whatever reason, but nobody's taking it down. It's still there. It speaks for itself, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that.
What I've seen.
Nobody's losing their jobs or being kicked out of school over the banner, even though people don't like it. And I think that's a good way to handle a controversial situation. There are clearly people who disagree and are offended and upset, and they don't have the right to not be offended and upset.
Do you think at these other universities that the resignation of certain administration people over these issues is unwarranted?
It depends on the role they played. Like, the people calling for the Yale professor's resignation over this rebuttal letter, I think may be a bit overblown. But I think, to go to a more serious issue, I think the Missouri University president resigned over the racial tensions.
That has been much hotter of a situation.
But that's what I'm saying. I think, and I don't know the roles that the administrators play, and, you know, maybe the president couldn't have done a whole lot, in which case I say maybe, you know, his stepping down may not have been warranted, but I don't know the ins and outs of that school's administration. But I think if there's a problem that's not being addressed, and you can point to negligence, somebody clearly is not doing their job, in which case it stands to reason that person does not deserve that job. Somebody better can do that job.
Yeah.
Or somebody else can do that job better.
Me neither, and dead honest,
But, you know, when you disagree with a professor's opinion, that does not mean they should lose their job. I guess it's a difference in not just power, because I know you love to talk about structure and power, but it's a difference.
Do.
It's a difference in power, but it's also a difference in being able to be part of the solution, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm still literally throwing the exact same 3 papers around the studio that I have been.
He likes to throw paper.
So, I'm not super informed on the social and political politics of what the Juniata campus is like, let alone the Yale. So,
I mean,
the Yale and the Missouri.
So.
Honestly, I'm not at all a part of the community, so I'm only taking in what I've seen of the media and of the social media for this. So, I don't want to have a firm, sort of set of decision myself on whatever the events transpired, because I'm not involved in that community at all. It seems if the discourse was about racially or culturally charged Halloween costumes, then it does definitely seem that the resignation of, was it the president or the dean?
I think it was the president.
The president. That definitely seems like a big thing. And I mean, I'm the sort of person that takes racially or culturally charged Halloween costumes seriously, and the resignation of the president is a big thing to happen.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I don't know entirely, but because I feel like, I mean, there's always more nuance to it about the atmosphere and the culture of that environment.
I think here's the difference between how you and I react to insensitivity. Is I will be offended, and I'll just say, you know what? I'm going to have this person in my life less. Where you would probably be more confrontational about it, in that this person shouldn't be doing this.
I mean, if I think the
maybe that was a bad way to put it.
The discourse about why you shouldn't be doing something is, I think, beneficial to the culture. I mean, I'm not going to be complacent to things that I think are culturally abhorrent, such as certain amounts of certain forms of insensitivity or dehumanization at differential levels. And there's, I mean, I'm not Mr. I mean, I represent like a lot of the a little bit less radical of the Tumblr leftist sort of stuff on the show, but I feel like let a lot of stuff slide.
Culture, I think we look at it, the cause-effect relationship differently here, because you seem to be willing to tackle it on an individual level, whereas my issue, the solution I am more willing to be a part of, is rather than waste my energy confronting individuals to attack the structural issues causing these problems. You know, causing bad representations, causing caricature costumes to be sold at Walmart or wherever it is people buy them, rather than walking up to someone or, you know, posting on somebody's wall or photo and saying, like, you're an insensitive racist, blah, 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 or something like that. Or, you know, yelling at somebody I don't agree with. I would try to be part of a structural solution to what I see as an inequality of representation or an inequality of something.
No, I feel on that. It's definitely not enough to, if you see something like a culturally or racially insensitive Halloween costume, it's not enough to just call someone out on it and then leave it at that and be like, you're this, you're that. Like, accuse them of racism, just or unjust. It's because that puts that person on the defensive immediately. And that's, you know, something that, like, everyone, like, if you get put on the defensive about it, you're going to defend that point.
Well, here's the thing.
But, like, it has to be about explaining, like, you have to say, like, I mean, if you saw something that was like a culturally insensitive costume, like a cartoon mustache and sombrero, you say, like, you understand in the culture, like, why this is acceptable, and you disagree with the fact that that is acceptable, but then you explain, like, this causes such and such negative consequences. And as I've said before, it's the sort of consequences that's really difficult to quantify, because something like this action is a normalization and a perpetualization of some sort of, like, caricature, like, dehumanizing culture about, like, the idea of this, that it, like, really delegitimizes and, like, you know, cartoonifies certain cultural or ethnic groups, and how that is dangerous and how that leads to dehumanization and oppression, which is what I say. But it's extremely hard to quantify. It's really,
I would still say it's
really difficult to, like, see.
Those things are symptoms of a larger problem, and I think wasting your energy treating the symptoms just prolongs the root cause, if that makes any sense, because you could be spending that energy, like, why do these costumes exist?
Yeah. Go
after that. Why do people make these costumes? Like, if they're not there, people won't wear them. And I'm not saying ban them, because that's an authoritarian approach. That's just going to make people get nasty.
That's going to increase defensivity.
I'm saying figure out why in the culture these are acceptable costumes and go after that. Like, the whole way of thinking, not just the individuals. Go after the ideology that people absorb, which then goes to create these costumes and this media that you say perpetuate the problem, but I would say they're merely a symptom of a larger problem.
I understand what you mean, and the idea, like, what these things are built on, why culturally that's acceptable. My perspective on it is that is constructed on, in some way, the representation of it, that it is somewhat cyclical. I mean, like, my question is, how then do you approach, like, how to deconstruct the cultural perception of, say, Mexican people that is this cartoon.
Put
If you
normal
don't-
Mexican people in more visible places.
Exactly. Put like, and that's what we talk about on here a lot is the better representation and the more like, and you say diverse representation. This is diverse in the sense of you don't have one kind of Mexican person. You have a full human range of Mexican people represented in the media. And what
Right,
I'm
but
saying
what
is that
I'm
that informs
saying-
people's perception
What I'm
of
saying
them.
is instead of becoming censorious in your approach and saying this is bad, this is good, you simply flood the market with things that are better. People will gravitate. The mass majority of people, I believe, I am no sociologist or psychologist, I cannot say this for sure. I believe the mass majority of people will go for better representations over poor ones. They will
Yeah.
identify more with them. They will empathize more with them. Not just because they belong to those groups, but generally in media, people empathize more with a fully fleshed out character.
Yeah,
Even terrible ones. Breaking Bad is a great case study in that. Walter White is a terrible human being, but people loved him.
We both watched Master of None. Aziz Ansari's personal project. The comedian
Yeah, I really
Aziz
liked it.
Ansari.
I don't
a
remember the
full
name of the
season on
big bearded
Netflix.
dude, but like that guy was golden.
Oh,
Every scene
it
he
was
in.
Tim and Eric. It was Eric
Yeah.
Wareheim.
Yeah, dude, that guy was great.
I like that.
Every scene he was in was like pure
So
comedy gold.
one of Aziz Ansari as the character dev in this show, one of his critical moments was talking to a television executive.
Oh, and they wanted him to do the accent.
They wanted him to do an Indian accent. Aziz Ansari is is an American dude of Indian descent.
Well, it's funny too because I actually read an article a while ago about him talking about this in an interview. He's like, "No, I just refused to do it, and I did lose jobs because of it, but I stood my ground, and eventually I got, Parks and Rec, which really boosted my career."
And that is super admirable. And I hope
one of his
other-
rationales for creating Master of None was so that he didn't get typecast as like imitations of Tom over and over again, basically just
Yeah.
basically yelling things vaguely along the lines of "treat yourself"
Treat
over
yours-
and over. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that way, like Aziz Ansari is a fantastic dude, and
He's
that
so
he's
funny.
really achieved that himself. But one of the points of one of his episodes is that his character dev is talking to this white TV executive about diverse representation in the media. Oh, no. And what do you?
No, this
don't
episode.
You oh,
no,
no
because
at
this
me.
episode was so good. I might be thinking of a different episode, but it's the one where I think he auditioned for two buddies.
Yeah, he auditioned
And-
for this
and
idea. Two buddies.
The guy was like, "Oh, we can only have one Indian because if we have both of them Indians, it'll be the Indian show."
It'll be the
and
Indian
that kind
show.
of goes into that catch-22 I mentioned in another episode, where there's so few representations that each one that comes up new is held under a very intense spotlight when it shouldn't be, because that hurts, the market for new. And what we're seeing is, like Master of None, we're seeing things rise up out of the indie sphere into prominence all at once, and eventually the market will hopefully flood and balance itself out. I'm hoping, But the moment that really got me in that show was not just him talking to the executive and the executive being like, "Oh, we can only have one Indian, otherwise it's the Indian show." But it was when that guy died and he talked to her replacement. Do you remember what the replacement said?
I can't remember. Wasn't it like marginally worse? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like it was like, "Oh, we can have both Indians, but one is a stereotype and one is like a normal American."
So what we're talking about is the idea, like, okay, so, because we're getting pretty deep into it, and I gotta simplify it to process it at my level.
Yeah.
So you have the representation of Mexican people. You don't want it to be like this cartoon stereotype. You want a complex and diverse representation of Mexican people. So you would have like multiple characters with extremely different personalities and personas in something like this. And the argument that this like white media producer,
What was that?
Roll call.
Oh, tenting.
Tenting, God, I hate tenting. Also, our playlist finally ended because we've been on here for a long time.
Oh boy.
The idea behind this was if you have like two people of a certain ethnicity, say that it was like two Indian dudes in the show, then it becomes an Indian show. And this was the argument that this like,
producer made.
white producer posed, was that it's an Indian show and that doesn't market broadly. And that is something that I
Well-
refer to all the time as the industrial cynicism about representation to say that something doesn't sell well. It's the same idea that say
Well, it's not
that
even
say,
just
like,
that.
that like black lead movies don't
It's not even
market
that.
well in Europe, and that's what actually holds people back. But that's a self-perpetuative cycle.
I was gonna say it's not even
You know?
it's not even that, because there's this almost there's a very limiting risk aversion to doing things that are new and exploring new markets.
Exactly, it's risk
But
aversion.
not just that, because his response was also like very, very passive, like, oh, I'd love to, but you just can't do that. It's not how it is these days. We're not there yet.
That's the
And it's like-
cynicism
and it's-
that I
well,
hate.
Well,
That is what I
that's not
super disagree
cynicism.
with.
That's not cynicism. That's paying lip service and then taking a very passive reconciliation.
True.
Where it's like, oh, I would if I could, but people just
And my
wouldn't like it.
problem-
And it's like, well, why don't you try it?
And my thing about, and so this white producer argued like, well, like you can have two black people in a show now, and it's not a black show, but like Indian people just, and like the quote, they're like, they aren't there yet. And this is something that I really disagree with the rhetoric about, whether or not this was Aziz Ansari's like point in the episode that he made, was that Aziz then like tells to his other Indian actor friend, who were the two Indian dudes that this was a whole problem about, says like, well, he said himself, well, Indian people just aren't there yet in media representation, and maybe that's exactly the point he was trying to make, but that seemed to me crazy, like an internalization of that cynicism about that it's just not marketable to like the broad audience in the way that makes the money for the TV show that they won't do it, that they won't take that risk.
I think
and
it
the
was
thing
just
is,
a simple statement of the corporate media environment.
it definitely was, and
I don't think it
whether
was,
or not,
but I don't think it was Aziz Ansari internalizing anything.
whether or not it was the character of Dev's internalizing of that idea is what I don't know.
I don't think it was, because he still refuses to do the accent. He still,
Then that's-
and he was perfectly willing to be in a show with two Indian people until he found out that it was basically one is an American and one is a stereotype.
Yeah. And that's, so I don't necessarily know where I stand. I love Master of None and Aziz Ansari. I like that stuff.
I liked most
But-
of it. Some of it was a little weird, like just the pacing of it, I guess.
First off, I think Tim Heidecker was wasted.
Tim
on
Heidecker.
Tim Heidecker, the big bearded white guy. Yeah.
Oh my God, he was great.
I
I thought
thought,
you said he was Eric something.
no, it was from Tim and Eric. Oh, wait. Okay, Tim and Eric is Tim Heidecker and Eric Wareheim. The big white dude on Master of None is Eric Wareheim.
Yeah, that guy was hilarious.
I thought, I've seen his work on Tim
Oh,
and
he was
Eric.
probably on something every time he was on set.
Oh, guaranteed. I thought he was honestly wasted on the. I mean, I didn't mean wasted like in that sense. If that's what you thought I meant.
Oh.
I thought he as an actor was wasted on the character of the like goofy man-child.
I don't like that character.
I didn't
Goofy
either.
man-child. It's
I didn't either.
overdone.
I think I'm exactly with you on that. So, which is why I think. I mean, Eric Wareheim is a really brilliant dude. Tim and Eric is a fantastic, like, extreme, like, degenerate surrealist show that I love. But I thought that his character like did absolutely nothing for me. It was just weak. I mean, they did like, oh, he goes into a bounce house, like he has a pet seal thing, and he like says these goofy things, and it's like this. It wasn't.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought it wasn't as good a character as Eric Wareheim could have been.
I also really liked how they kind of touched on like how old folks' retirement homes are like basically a death sentence, where you're literally just sitting there waiting to die.
I've seen more brutal representations of the.
It was a very
retirement home.
lighthearted take on it, where she was like, "Get me out of here, please."
Yeah, because she wanted to go out and like be in the city and live that city
Live her
life,
life,
more,
yeah.
and be like a lounge singer, which was phenomenal.
I think it
But
was
I've
implied
seen-
that she did that like growing, like when she was younger, and that's why she went back.
But I
to
mean,
it.
have you seen Happy Gilmore, where like the
No.
nursing home was like literally like a prison camp or something? There have been like
I don't
much
think
more
so.
severe and
Oh, I mean,
grating representations of what a nursing home is.
Obviously.
Yeah. In Master of None, it was pretty tame, where there was just the dude, the nurse, who was just like, oh, yeah,
Yeah,
just be like,
they're
oh,
like
trick
super
him, we're
friendly,
gonna
and then he leaves, and she's like, "I hate him."
and we're gonna sneak you out, and he's like, I hate him, like, yeah, the food here is garbage.
Yeah.
I dig that. But so dig right back to it. It's about that like in industry cynicism that say something isn't marketable so that we can't do it. If any sort of representation, if any sort of like broad and diverse, and I mean diverse in the sense that you have like a diverse representation of
Yeah.
any certain like categorized ethnicity.
Yeah. Well,
That is not marketable, that is something that they can't do because it won't make money. Well, that's the sort of thing. I mean, if culturally that's not acceptable, then by sticking to what is acceptable, that's not advancing the culture in any way. That's not
Yeah.
improving it in any way, and that's a cynicism because it's profitable. but to take the risk and to improve the media representation by taking the risk and going to it, that's going to make everything better.
Not even that.
Then you won't have...
You don't even have to look at it that way. Looking at this from a purely economic standpoint, there's clearly been a demonstrated demand for these things.
Absolutely!
And to not explore that market is very, very confusing from a purely economical standpoint, because there is money to be made there, and they are not making money off of it.
And I don't mean the word conservative in the way that it's conservative v liberal, but it's conservative in the way that they are not taking the risk to move in a progressive direction.
Right.
They're staying with what is known and what is safe and what is profitable. But that's
not necessarily profitable, but what they know they will get a return on investment on.
Exactly.
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed.
But here's the thing. I would apply that logic to replacing existing comic book heroes with minority versions that are basically, in some cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, really just kind of very shallow characters that are just like, look, female Thor, diversity, wave my arms, we're doing good things. Like, they're looking for an easy guaranteed, like, cop-out way to get money, to get that, but also to get attention, because there has been that demand, but they're taking the easy way by, instead of making a new character with their own backstory, they're just kind of taking the easy way out.
The demand for broad and diverse and complex representation, characterization is there, definitely.
Not just
because
that,
we saw
the demand for new things.
Exactly, that's what it's a part of.
Not just even diversity, just new things. We have been seeing the same TV show, like every sitcom is an iteration on Friends or The Office now. Every
yeah, kind of.
Every comic is an iteration of the established big name Cape Comics. There is a safety that has taken over the media, and there is such a demand for new things.
That's what's miserable.
It's not even about diversity at this point. It's just a demand for something new. Please.
So the example I always go to is Frozen, right? Where this was the new idea that this is the two-princess Disney movie. There's two princesses, and the whole story is based around the relationship between them. These sisters, and one has ice superpowers.
It's not even revolving around, for the most part, a romantic relationship. It's about love is important, yes, but familial love is also important.
It's familial, platonic relationships and all that, and that's great. Where even hinted at a romantic relationship was not like followed through to the inevitable, like, oh, they kiss, they get married, they do this thing. It's like left to be like, okay, this is a complex developing. This is a relationship that may be developed. The point is that the formula of it, the two princess formula of it,
they subverted the formula.
It was fresh. It was so fresh, and that's why it hit. And the problem was that the higher ups in Disney, as I read in articles, and they saw the success of that. I don't sit in on Disney executive meetings, so I don't know. But so what I read from the article was that the executives were seeing this as a weird anomaly to the system, that they didn't know what it was, and they thought it was a fluke. They thought it was just like a random thing. But the true success of Frozen was that it was fresh, that it was a new idea and a new formula.
It wasn't just fresh, though. It took the formula and it sort of mocked it. And I think that's something people liked as well. It was fresh, yes, but it acknowledged that the old formula was tired.
Yeah, I like that. So
I think that was why it was so successful, because there are plenty of fresh things out there, but they don't necessarily catch on. And that's just the market. A story that a lot of people think is good will ideally catch on. And this one people thought was good, and it was better because it took that formula, and it's like, you know what? Screw your formula. It's done. It's overdone.
Frozen had the great benefit of being something fresh, but also being something that was that I don't know how necessarily, but it was extremely well-funded and well-publicized to the point that it was able to take off like it was.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that new stuff, that fresh stuff, that real, like, good stuff is out there. The problem is that it doesn't necessarily get the visibility because of the market and the industrial cynicism, as we've talked about.
I wouldn't say the market, I would say just the industrial conservatism with taking risks.
Yeah. But it's there, and like the idea is that we've got to really blow that up. We've got to publicize that. We've got to make that big.
Look at like reboots.
Yeah.
That is a surefire way to get money. Rather than make a new movie, they will reboot an old one. Or rather than make a new movie, they will make a sequel to something that was a hit.
I mean, they're making Avengers movies out of characters that were created in the 1930s. Like these, it's old.
Like I said, these characters, they're
stuff.
Great. But we've reached a point of oversaturation. We need something. People are desperate for new things.
Yeah, I am. I sure am. Dude, honestly, I mean, want to expand on this a little bit to the idea of video games, where there's still a whole bunch of like shooter video games where you play as a grizzled, masculine white man, you know, got a bit of a scruffy beard, probably shaved head, you know what I mean, yeah? And
The Call of Duty formula.
exactly, and I really, I mean, personally, I eat up most anything that is not that. I mean, we played, and we can dig into Fallout, but I played a little bit of Fallout 4 over the weekend, and the first thing I did, because, I mean, immediately, you get to control, like, male, female, any sort of whatever the character is, any of their ethnicities, their body types, which was a really interesting change to Fallout.
Did you customize both parents or just the one you played
I customized both.
Oh, great.
Because I thought what a really interesting thing I'd been reading about was about the media representation of interracial couples, and how in most cases an interracial couple always has one of the participants of the couple is white. So you never have a fully non-white interracial couple. So what I did was I characterized my player character to be a woman of Indian descent, and then she had an African American husband, and that's who I played as. Anyway, the point is, what I do, and it's me, and you know, I'm the Tumblr guy, and I'm socially progressive. I've played so many video games as a white dude like me that I'm sick of it. So whenever I get a video game where I can customize my character, I mean, in true role-playing fashion, I try to be someone that isn't me. And I try to, like, embody and think about myself as that person. And so I want to, like, and in terms of Fallout 4, everyone plays as this, like, cartoon 1950s happy family.
Yeah,
at
well,
the beginning.
that's the start, yeah.
That's the start of it. So I try to be just... Maybe it's me going, like,
Fun fact about
too
Fallout.
far in the opposite direction just to be contrarian in this regard, but, like, I do try to separate myself and my representation being, like, a white man from my characters entirely. Anyway.
I think the problem is, though, these arguments tend to follow or go hand in hand with, like, we can't identify with these characters because of their race or their gender, and I think that's ridiculous.
That's the ultimate fallacy. I'm with you on that.
I think that's quite frankly ridiculous. That's not to say there shouldn't be more representations, because more things can never be a bad thing. But to say that people can't empathize with others just because of race, you've now gone so progressive that you've gone back to 50s racism. Like, let's be honest, you're arguing separate but equal in a video game. Like, come on.
Wait, what are you saying? Wait, like, so my opinion is
like
that to say,
basically saying, like, because I am white, I cannot identify with that black character. That's silly. Or because I am Jewish, I cannot identify with a Christian character, that I can't empathize with them and their struggles. That's silly. That's saying humans can't empathize with other humans. That's what society's built on some level.
That's exactly the industrial cynicism that I talk about. It's first off, to us.
See, you're saying it's industrial cynicism, but, and I know you don't like it when I call out the bad parts of Tumblr, but that is an idea that also rears its head on those excessively, I guess, reactionary parts of Tumblr, you would call it. Mm-hmm. You see that
excessively
there. You see that there. You see that there, and that's you know, that core idea in a, you know, founded in a good place, gone to a bad place in the extreme.
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea of, like, that you can't empathize with someone based on something like their gender, their ethnicity, or their cultural background it's silly, but to think about it from the perspective of a white man, and I hope that any of my listeners think about this, is that it's extremely condescending to you. And it's insulting to me, I think, because it tells me, well, hey, we're gonna make this media, and we're gonna, like, market it to, like, in the terms of video games, it's gonna be like a grizzled straight white man, because that's the most relatable to you, because that's the way you're gonna understand it. And I say that's bull. It's insulting to say that, like, I wouldn't be able to relate to and to empathize with and to characterize myself in the position of someone of a different gender or ethnicity, when that stuff should be very superficial, relevant, compared to the situation they're in. Like, Lara Croft Tomb Raider is, like, lost in the mountains fighting mercenaries with whatever she finds in her bow and arrow.
That game was great.
I haven't played it, honestly.
The game was mostly great. The plot got a little predictable.
But my point is, the fact that Lara Croft, as this anthropology student who gets wrapped up in this dangerous, like, wilderness mercenary group type fight, the fact that, like, that she's a woman should be, like, nothing to the player. you have to put yourself in that position and you have to identify with that character. And like, what if someone is a different gender or ethnicity or cultural background, that like I won't be able to connect with the situation of, say, being lost in the wilderness, having to fight with, you know, the resources available to you against these people with crazy guns?
It's essentially asserting that people identify more with arbitrary things than with situations and struggles and events, which is, I think, backwards, to be perfectly honest. People relate to other people on similar experiences.
On a human level.
Sometimes race is a factor in that, unfortunately. But that shouldn't be the case in media.
Yeah, and
to say, oh, well, they can't relate to this character. He's, despite functionally behaving like an ordinary, you know, member of Western society, he's black. They can't understand that. That's incredibly demeaning.
And for a producer to say, yo, me, as the audience of this game, am not going to be able to relate to a person of a different gender, ethnicity, cultural background, eat dicks. I can relate to people. I have that broad human empathy, okay? I don't think that everyone else is like a totally like different species of person with like a whole different brain structure. Yeah. I know how to understand people's positions and empathize emotionally with stuff. And in this regard, and I mean in the general sociocultural regard, it's not identical, but in the like form of video game,
in the realm
role
of video
play,
games,
ethnicity and gender and cultural background is extremely superficial.
It absolutely is.
So and because then that it becomes extremely stale when it is this like monolithic form of representation.
Well, it's also not just that, but it's incredibly stale when every game has to be a shooter or some sort of variation on an FPS. I love, honestly, I've really come to enjoy like first-person survival horror games, but there are genres that are not necessarily suited to the first person that you will see people put in the first person, like Mirror's Edge. Honestly, really solid platformer. But here's the thing. It is also one of the worst platformers I ever played because you can't see yourself in relation to the environment.
Well,
because you're stuck in the first person.
Yeah. I mean, compared to like, okay, aside from like first, third person, like literal perspective of it, I mean, we're talking about games where like the only way to progress and the only way to solve your problems is through violence.
I mean, I think that one's a little less of an issue just because it's an easy narrative shorthand for conflict. That doesn't mean, I mean, there's plenty of games that there's progression through non-violence. It depends on the story, and honestly, it's a hallmark of human fantasy and imagination. And so long as it stays in the realm of fantasy, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I don't know. I agree with that. In a certain way, I think the media representation of being able to solve your problems through violence, I mean, that's the way it's always been. That's really deeply ingrained in our culture in any form of media.
Because
I mean, you defeat your opponent by just beating the hell out of them.
It's wish fulfillment. That's really all it is. Most people would not see, you know, I don't know, like some sort of investigative cop show or something, and say like, I'm gonna go find and beat the crap out of my wife's killer all by myself because this guy did it in the movie. That's not, no.
And I'm not like advocating to totally and I'm not advocating to do away with like violence as a solution in media, because I mean, literally any sort of ideas of storytelling that I would want to do, like actually, I mean, embarrassingly hinges on fighting personally. But what I would say though is that I really, in the same way that I highly value in media like different representation in a way that doesn't cater to like white man representation, like as we talked about, in a way that challenges and changes in a different direction, I also highly value narratives that use non-violence as a solution. And as we've talked about, the game, I'm gonna bring it back, Undertale, where you can solve all of your problems and play the games through compassion and empathy and communication, which like I can't advocate for that as being the standard, but I do really appreciate and really value, and personally I'm very attracted to that kind of narrative.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, what I don't like is the people who take moral stances and say all violent video games should, like the Jack Thompsons of the video game industry.
I don't know who that is.
Look him up. He was basically saying like GTA causes mass shootings and stuff like that.
Okay, well, and that dude I disagree with, yeah.
and like using that as an excuse to try and censor all violence in video games, and like the industry basically laughed him into like obscurity.
The first picture of him is literally holding up a copy of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, so I understand the kind of guy this is. And it's a gradient on that. It's a spectrum. I mean, there was that game Hatred that was literally centered around glorifying being a
mass shooter.
A mass shooter.
I wouldn't say glorifying. It was just
when you play as him, when the
arbitrary.
entire narrative around it is around that he's righteous and somehow slaughtering a whole bunch of people, I would say that's glorifying. I would say that is really.
I can't pass judgment on a game I haven't played.
Me neither, but I'd say
then
from what I've seen of it is that it's
then
like
stop. You can't say it's glorifying violence unless you've played it and seen it all the way through. It's only glorifying violence if it presents the fact that he kills innocent people as a good thing in and of itself for no real reason. If it's just being cheeky, if it's just being arbitrary, that's not glorifying it. That's just like, here's a game.
If I played through the whole game and by the end of it, on any level of interpretation projects the idea that this character's weird, like hyper violent crusade of murder and torture against everyone in the world was like unjustified and unhealthy and not an example of what anyone should do to correct their own problems with the world, then I would say then it's not glorifying mass violence. But if the game goes through as like this entire narrative that this dude was motivated righteously by mass violence, then I would say that that's glorifying mass
I think the
violence.
fact that the game is called Hatred is enough proof that it's really not glorifying anything.
I mean,
Again, we can't pass judgment on something we've not seen or played.
hypothetically though, as artistic intention, if the creators are like, in sort of at any level
I think the
implicitly
artistic
saying,
intention was just to piss people off, because I followed the development of that game, and it was really just the creators were really mad
And
at people like Jack Thompson saying these are murder simulators, and they're like, you know what? You want a murder simulator? Here's a murder
and
simulator.
if this was a parody, then that's what
I think it was meant to lampoon. Like the intention. That doesn't mean it's portrayed that way, but I can't speak to that because I haven't played or experienced the game.
I mean,
I know the intentions of the developers. That's
unless
it.
the developers are literally just like a whole bunch of Dylan Klebold's,
I don't know who that is.
the dude who did Columbine. Like,
Oh, I thought his name was Dylan Roof.
oh, that was the more recent guy. That was the dude who like shot up the
okay.
church.
Yes, I'm getting confused. I apologize.
Oh yeah, dude, Dylan's historically
Funny, because my first roommate
Or some
freshman year
high-profile mass
was really
murderers.
creepy, and his name was Dylan,
but
and he
Dylan
eventually dropped out.
Klebold and there was the other dude who perpetrated the Columbine massacre. But Dylan Klebold's the only one in my brain that I remember. But right, if the development team is a bunch of Dylan Klebolds who like truly honestly believe that atrocious violence is the way to solve their problems, that's messed
Yeah, which I don't
deep down
think
critically.
is the case, but
And presumably they're like normal, rational people who, at the very least, are
think
doing
they
this just as a way
troll.
to troll, to publicize themselves, to like be inflammatory for the sake of being inflammatory, and also for the sake of then publicizing their game because it's inflammatory. But regardless of artistic intention, it's a matter of how the public receives it. Where if there is one person, let alone multiple people, who take this game and that then fuels their actual Dylan Kleboldiness.
I don't know. That's a weird cause and effect relationship there.
And I totally disagree with the idea that like that Doom caused Columbine or that Grand Theft Auto causes any violence. But it's hard to say if this game like on a surface level glorifies mass violence and then it somehow influences somebody to commit mass violence.
Then that person
totally
is a bad person.
And
you cannot
disagree
blame
with the point.
a neutral work for the actions of a bad person.
And this is a real cognitive dissonance for me because I really disagree with the idea that media inherently causes violence, especially video game media, where
I agree.
it was a big case of contention that Doom influenced the Columbine shootings. And I disagree with that because, I mean, definitely normal people ought to be able to disassociate the fantasy from the reality, and you always have a violent fantasy. It's the same thing with Lord of the Rings. It's the same thing with anything.
Here's shifting
Most
the
media
topic.
has a violent
Here's
fantasy.
shifting the topic a little bit.
But-
because I do think the issue when stuff like this happens and when the media tries to point it at stuff like video games or movies, I think the reason mental health comes up is because that's generally what people believe. But then the problem therein is that why does that not happen for other people? And that ties back to the beginning of what we talked about with racism. Yeah. Because I think generally, we've already said this, normal people experience these things, engage in these media experiences, and they come out fine. It was like a fun romp through fantasy land where consequences don't exist.
I've killed thousands of people in Skyrim.
But mentally disturbed individuals take that experience and externalize it.
And, like, so it's a really tough spectrum for me, where I don't know where I stand on this necessarily. There's certain places where, of course I agree, it's not the fault of whatever creators this is, but I do believe that any creator of media has a responsibility for what they're putting into the culture. And if what they're putting into the culture in any way rationalizes for a mentally disturbed person to commit mass violence,
you lost me.
Then I'm not sure. Well, I'm not.
I'm not
taking
the
a stance
victim.
either.
If you want to point it that way, you're blaming an individual who made something with completely benign intentions, and you're blaming him for the actions of a completely unrelated individual. You are shifting responsibility from the person who actively decided to pick up a weapon and end people's lives to somebody who never had any intention to kill or harm a single human being.
From where I'm approaching it at, it's no 100% responsibility or guilt or culpability or anything for it. But
here's the thing.
What I'm struggling with is that it's hard to say. I don't think the creators of Doom had any responsibility for the Columbine murders, but like if somebody were to have played hatred and that then like really greatly influenced them to commit,
then what?
Some sort of mass violence, then I don't know.
If it wasn't hatred, then it would be, I don't know, some movie, Resistance or something.
I don't know.
Yeah, if it's not one thing, it'll be something else. The problem with doing this is you're shifting the blame away from the individual who makes the choice to end lives.
There's no single blame.
Yes, there is.
I don't know where I stand
an individual.
No, it's 100%.
An individual is responsible for their own actions. You made a choice today to come in here and do radio. No one else made you do radio. That was your choice.
I sure did. I've got a lot of reasons not to be in here at 11:30
a person who goes out ultimately makes the choice to pick that weapon up and kill. They may be urged on by other people, but a normal person would not do it under ordinary circumstances.
True.
The responsibility for acts of violence lies with the perpetrator. To blame a piece of media is to shift that responsibility away from the individual.
You're right. I'm not trying to shift the responsibility, I guess.
But that's what you're accomplishing.
You're right, and I wouldn't. Because if I was hypothetically in charge of the discourse, if a mass shooting took place, I wouldn't want to like shift the entire conversation to hatred in their creators.
Let me put this in another light. Let me shift this a little bit into a hypothetical. That's like the people who say Harry Potter causes people to turn to Satanism and witchcraft.
Well, that's ridiculous.
But that's what I'm saying. People who do those things, they do them on their own. A piece of media is not going to suddenly cause an outbreak of Satanism.
Well, not in the case of Harry Potter, no. Because Harry Potter had nothing to do with Satanism.
Right, but I'm saying generally, speaking in general terms, most media is produced with relatively neutral intent on most things. No greater message. Yes? Well, no. That's not a good way to put it.
Greater message depends.
No intent to deliver a message to do one thing or another or to support this or that. Most media.
I would assume
most media simply exists to tell a story.
I would assume that the
provide an experience.
I would assume that the creators of hatred don't want people to commit mass acts of violence.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Most works of media are generally just sort of neutral, unless they sort of take on a philosophical argument or some sort of socio-political stand, in their themes or explicitly. Yeah? You'd agree with me there?
Yeah.
In that case, you're taking a neutral thing and assigning value to it based on the actions of an unrelated, a tangentially related individual. That's like saying Pokemon causes devil worship. That's like saying... that's like saying Steven Universe turns people gay.
I think those are extreme examples of yours.
But you're making an extreme example here.
No, I know what you mean, and this is why this is tough for me. It's because I don't believe that you can blame media for acts of violence, but if there was not only hatred, but if there was a bunch of other different kinds of media that similarly seemingly justifies mass acts of violence like that, like hatred does, or like Columbine did, would that media representation influence a person who was mentally disturbed to actually normalize it and be like, well, then it's normal, then it's okay for me to commit this mass act of violence?
I think media that truly glorifies that behavior, and not like, 24-hour news cycle glorifies, but truly glorifies it.
Yeah.
I think that is generally, if it were to happen, I think it would be condemned by society at large.
I don't know where to put this. This is honestly tough for me. This is a weird space. I think it's a good thing that I can't make a square, definition in my brain about it. It's a really hard. It's a spectrum. It's a gradient.
It is. I'm arguing from an absolute standpoint, but I do agree that there is. That's not to say it doesn't influence people, but you cannot blame, in my opinion, a work of media or the creators of a work of media. What
I wouldn't. No.
For the actions of an unrelated individual.
I wouldn't blame a creator or the media itself for something, but I do believe in responsibility of media creators to be responsible for what sort of content and what sort of ideas and what sort of ideology and what sort of perception of the world that they put out into the culture. I believe in that responsibility.
I don't know. I don't think
that gets into our differences.
Yeah, I don't know that there's really a moral responsibility for creators other than to write a good story. To write an engaging story, to create an engaging experience. I don't know that they have a moral responsibility. Their art or their creations are simply a reflection of those who consume it.
Personally,
you cannot assign a value to a mirror. A mirror simply reflects what is shined into it. Shined
into it. Personally, and I haven't created much myself. I hope to someday. My personal idea is that I approach a lot of stuff in the ideas and the content and the message that I'm putting out, that I am or would put out into the content that I create.
Yeah, I mean,
so
don't
that's
get me
my
wrong.
perspective,
I love
and I feel like you really need to put out something that is compelling and that is interesting, but it has to put good into the culture.
But what is good? How do you define good?
I want to define good as committing acts of mass violence.
Well, what I'm saying is you're assigning qualitative values to something that has none. A piece of media is nothing until somebody engages with it.
Which is why I would say I'd be open to people talking about if anything that I did was good or whatever or not. But I mean, I like to think I would put out anything that's good. We're getting deep into the weeds on it, I guess.
I need coffee. Can you go?
I can drive.
I've got a bunch of coffee in the other room.
No, I didn't want your coffee.
Why don't you want my coffee?
For anyone who doesn't know, Jay's coffee usually has a weird film of some kind of oil on it.
Ew.
And it's
I don't know what that is. I don't do that. I don't sweat into my coffee. It's fine.
Very strong.
I might drive to Sheeta.
If it's strong, then you just drink half of it.
That's not how it works. Does not do
Hey,
that.
I put this on the internet. This is on my portfolio. My parents listen to this. No, they don't, because honestly, I haven't uploaded an episode of the Slouch.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
They're
maybe
You're
they-
so behind.
They're so long, dude. I have so many projects
Speaking
I
of
put
which,
on
we
myself.
need to wrap
barely
this
handle
up.
it.
We need to
Look,
wrap this up soon.
My winter break project, my summer project. I have all these episodes saved.
No,
I
I'm
really do. They're all
actually
saved. I
I'm
wanna have
actually
them up
really
on there.
behind on my research project, which is probably what I'm going to do.
I'm so behind.
after
I'm like 5 episodes behind on the Slouch. I'm gonna do it someday. Swear to God, I'm gonna do it. I'm never gonna get rid of these files on my
Thanks,
computer. They're always gonna be on here. But I just wanna I wanna have the note right about what we talk about when we talk about it, so
Yeah.
people can skip back and forth. I wanna put out a podcast for it. Anyway,
We should
okay.
wrap up though.
First though, gosh, Kevin was sending us because we were talking about at some point. I think Star Wars and where humans come from in Star Wars. Let me read.
Oh, is there actually a where humans come from in Star Wars?
I just looked it up. Kevin said Alderaan was the home planet of humans, which in the case of A New Hope sucks, I guess, because Alderaan explodes. But so, real quick, I just looked up on Wikipedia. I know, right? The Star Wars wiki, the official Star Wars wiki, like the main one. It's got all kinds of good stuff on it. Humans, and I'm quoting literally from the page humans. I'm quoting. Humans, taxonomically referred to as Homo sapiens, were the galaxy's most numerous and politically dominant sentient species, with millions of major and minor colonies galaxy-wide.
And
So
this
for
has
the rest,
nothing to do with the budgetary concerns of making the original Star Wars movie.
it does. And for the, we want to talk about relatable characters. You can't, the same way well, in a different way, but in a similar way that some say, like, oh, you can't relate to like a black character or something.
Relate to an
you can't
alien.
relate to a Jar Jar Binks as the protagonist necessarily.
Jar Jar Binks.
Because it's humans. Also,
Jar Jar Binks is
having
annoying.
humans act is easier than having full CG characters.
I was gonna say it's
the point is,
budgetary reasons primarily.
but the point is that influences the universe, and the key thing is that the Homo sapiens are the galaxy's most numerous and politically dominant species.
What are you getting at?
Just think about Star Wars in that context for the rest of your life, is what I'm saying. Let me
Are
continue.
you getting at anything here?
Getting at that they're politically dominant and easily the most represented species in the galaxy. The point is, believed to have originated on the galactic capital of Coruscant. Believed to have, we don't know. They could be found anywhere, engaged in many different pursuits: spacers, mercenaries, smugglers, merchants, soldiers, assassins, farmers, crime lords, laborers, slaves, slavers, and many others, including Jedi and Sith. Since humans were the most common sentient species, they were often considered to be a standard or average to which the biology, psychology, and culture of other species were compared.
Okay.
We want to talk about, a complex couple of topics that come up in, real life Earth human culture is Eurocentrism and heteronormativity, where
Those are huge.
those are huge, very complex
Those are
ideas.
big
Where Eurocentrism,
topics.
white people, straight people are considered to be the standard, and that influences a lot of things in the culture.
I see what you're getting at, but just to take the contrarian's point here, for the sake of argument, if you look at the statistics, the reason that is that they're also the most numerous.
And likewise,
And by the
in
law
the
of
Star Wars
averages,
universe,
that is the average.
and likewise in the Star Wars universe, humans are the most prevalent, biggest, most around species. But it can be problematic when the culture compares everybody to the standard, and when the standard is a specific group that you are born into, then everyone born outside of that group is subjected to the standards of the standard,
Okay.
which in a lot of cases in our culture, the standard is white people, the standard is straight people.
Okay.
Understand?
So it's not the responsibility of the people outside of the standard to fix that. It's it's the responsibility of the people inside of the standard to change that perception.
And to what degree do the Star Wars galactic community focus on inclusivity of different kinds of people, different species?
I hope that people,
think
if
this
people
is
are
more of a-
listening to this, we need to extrapolate this to
I think this is more
real
of a-
world things, and
Just-
hopefully that's happening.
I think
Think about
you're
it.
looking very deeply into something that I think was really just born out of budgetary constraints.
True, but the fact that influenced the full lore, that influenced the universe itself.
Of course it's going to influence the lore.
The point is, when you watch Star Wars and
Yeah.
you see an alien like Chewbacca, there is an entire species. Imagine the breadth and the capacity and the differences in cultures of humans, where there's humans in Africa and humans in Eastern Asia and humans in Europe and humans in South America, and they all have very rich and diverse cultures of themselves. But you see one Wookiee, and that is your only perspective on what Wookiees are. Wookiees could have hundreds of different cultures among the Wookiee people, but you see one Wookiee.
You could say that for humans as well. You see one
Exactly.
That's-
monolithic
that's-
human
that's-
culture.
Media representation
Halo.
in a
Relax,
nutshell.
relax,
That's the
please.
point, because if you have one black person in a picture of Juniata College, which every single advertisement of a college pretty much is like, hey, we're diverse, and then you realize
Well-
that only 10% of the college is diverse, then you've got a problem, because
Well,
everybody thinks that it's a fourth of the college
it's
because there are 4
interesting.
students in the picture.
It's interesting because there's 2 ways to dehumanize people. It's to lower them to the level of animals, but another way of dehumanizing people is to put them on a pedestal. And I would say that what DJT was talking about is an example of putting someone up on a pedestal to the point where they're not an individual, they're a stand-in for a group that they happen to belong to, if that makes any sense.
I think that's both.
And that is the singular representation. You only know about Wookiees from what Chewbacca is. You only get the perspective on what what Indian culture is from the one Indian character. And that's why, because you can't have everyone perfectly represented in
No,
a single
no, you cannot.
thing of media, like a single movie.
No, you cannot.
which is why, broad sense, across the entire medium of film or television, there has to be, and it's not down to one person and one person's show and one person's anything, but it has to, like, in the big, broad sense of the entire medium, there has to be good representation. And
See,
compared to the thousands of galaxies and species in Star Wars, there's, I mean, the like limited amount of human cultures and ethnicities it shouldn't be that much of a challenge.
I mean, I agree with you up to a point. I just don't think you should point at somebody, say, the thing you've been doing your whole life, you're doing it wrong. If you want something, find a way to make it happen.
But if you
instead
don't do
of
that,
instead of yelling
then
at people
who get into the system will be continuously doing the same thing wrong.
Right, but I'm saying, rather than telling the people who do what they do how to do their job, find a way to make what you want a reality.
I mean, we're not hitting.
Provide the market
talking is
with
the
what you
form
want
of
to
reality
see.
that
Exactly. We're not hitting on individual people and their representation, but we're saying that the culture and the general media needs the better representation. And what people like us are like, what I try to do, I mean, Aziz Ansari does some of it. A lot of people try to do that, have like more diverse representation. You have to, what I've talked about, you have to be accepting of that. You have to be very open to that. And you gotta like.
I think most people are, to be honest.
I do too.
If it's presented at face value, I don't think people will question it.
And I do
the
too.
problem is, people make a huge deal out of it, and that sets people on edge.
All right. Okay, we gotta cut
We're
it.
gonna go get coffee because T is a little sleepy. So
Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to The Slouch. I'm pretty exhausted at this point. We got good. Man, that was good.
Yeah, just don't lose the recording.
Hey, it's on there. I'm recording at the better thing now because I'm not dumb.
Good.
I'm Jdox. I've been here with
Static.
and
DJT.
DJT.
Thanks for hosting us, Jay.
Hey, tomorrow night I'm going to be on at around 9 o'clock. I don't talk a whole bunch on my now available on CD and cassette show, but I play some vaporwave music. I think some people were talking to me.
Oh my god.
That was also tempting.
Oh god, they're
I'm
screwing
hungry.
up our thing. Some people were talking to me about the electronica subgenres. Vaporwave and synthwave and all of this is a relatively new thing. Yeah, and I will elaborate on that a whole bunch. I hope I get to hit on that at some point. And that's currently my mindset. I will keep on that. But vaporwave is something I like. Anyway, on Thursday at 9 o'clock, I do What's in Our Mailbox, and that is a show where I take in requests from people, and I also take in submissions from publication agencies that publicize their artists through my stuff, and I'm going to mix a little bit of that into our requests on Thursday. Again, that is at 9 o'clock, and Snack Shack goes on at 10 on Thursday, but after that show is done, I will be, because I have a whole lot of requests and submissions, I will be kicking back up at 11 o'clock Thursday night. And in the future, I may be, configuring the schedule better to suit a bigger block of the mailbox show. But again, love getting all that stuff in. You guys keep doing it. Let's see. And then on Saturdays at 2 p.m., I do Please Cancel Me, my personal show where I just turn into a huge mess and I goof around and we have fun.
Not too much unlike tonight.
Yeah. At least we have some kind of direction here on the Slouch. It can get crazy. It can get into a whole bunch of directions, but you should see me on Please Cancel Me. I'm literally going crazy on the mic.
It's a fun time. Y'all should be there.
Hey, if you want to send in mail to any of these shows, send it to Box 726 at Juniata College, Box 726 at 1700 Moore Street, Huntingdon, Pennsylvania 16652. You can address that to the Slouch if you want to talk to this show. If you have music requests, please send it into What's in Our Mailbox. Otherwise, I'm gonna play any music requests. We get a lot from Kevin this week to the Slouch music requests, but I'm gonna play those on Thursday on What's in Our Mailbox. So we got a big playlist going on then. Keep an ear out for that. Anyway, please talk to us about anything. If you have opinions on what we were saying, if you want to communicate with us, please mail in. Otherwise, a project I'm starting up is a zine published through WKVR. And yeah, I see you sighing at me, Static.
Sorry,
I gotta
you said this
publicize
already.
this. I gotta say it again because it's important to me. So, we have some DJs here that do a lot of good art. We have a lot of listeners that do a lot of good art and send some of it in. we are going to publish a zine here at Juniata College. We're going to publish it online for anyone who would like to see it. We are going to, I mean, if we get a lot of good prisoner submissions, hopefully we can get a whole bunch of package of these printed copies and hopefully get them to the prison and get them distributed. That is a really tentative idea, though, so hopefully we do. Anyway, the point is, if you have any art at all, drawings, doodles, sketches, paintings, design, shapes, anything, please send it in. If you have any writing, short stories, editorial columns, poetry, anything, please send it in. We really want to publish it. We really want to get you out there. We will credit you with your name if you want to throw out a blog or a website. We'll put that on there. We're not expecting to turn any profit with it. In fact, I'm currently planning on eating a whole bunch of my own money on printing of these zines. So, I mean, sorry, can't hit you up with any royalties for it, but we will promote you and we will publicize you and your art and everything. But please, even if you draw just anything, I mean, we get some cool stuff in here. We get skulls, we get anime people drawn. It's great.
Send it in. We get it.
Photography, collages, anything. Please, if we can print it, we want it because we extremely value our listeners and their artistry and their contributions, and we want to really get that out there. So, sorry, I'm rambling super hard on this, and my friends are waiting on me to go get food.
Oh, it's not that bad.
But,
well, you guys got me thinking about food, so now I'm hungry.
Please send it in to WKVR. Once again, Juniata College, Box 726. And we really want to get this ship a-rolling. So, thank you. We are going to throw you onto some Third Eye Blind. This is Motorcycle Drive-By. Thank you very much for listening to The Slouch on the Power 92.3 WKVR.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Yep.
Yup.
Yep.
That's when I knew that I could never hide.